To get started. We are so glad that you are here today for our webinar, Saving for the Future. And this is brought to you by IBH and Reliant Behavioral Health. And so, as I said previously, no need to take notes because we will be getting this out to you after the webinar. If you have questions as we go along, put them in the question box. I may not be able to check them until the very end, but certainly put those there if there's something that I don't cover. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with saving for the future. My name is Christine Lukin. I am known as the financial lifeguard. I am a money and emotions expert. I have coached and taught individuals about personal finances for over 12 years now. And there's one thing that I know, and it is that money is emotional. And I know with some of the things we're going through in our country right now, it can be even more emotional than usual. So I'm going to be giving a lot of really great practical advice that you can start applying right away. So the sad state of our savings right now is that, the United States, we are really poor savers. If we look at some of the average savings rates around the world, we show up at the very bottom. Only about 4% of our income is saved. We're looking at, these other countries who are saving 7%, 9%, and even 17%. So we are definitely losing out here. 62% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account. And there's a big problem with that because most of us can have a relatively minor financial event, and even just having $1,000 in the bank probably isn't going to cut it to catch that emergency for us. The average 401k balance is only about $35,000. That might seem like a lot to you, maybe if you're just starting out in your career, but that is looking at everyone who is part of working America, and that should really be a lot higher. And 1 in 4 American families has literally $0 in a savings account. So the problem with this is having no savings means that people are financing their emergencies. They're financing their major purchases and they're financing their children's educations. And whenever we do that, it costs us more in the long run. So there are a lot of different reasons why we should be saving money. We all know that we should be saving and investing for retirement, for large purchases like vacations, for emergencies. You have a major breakdown in your car, or your spouse gets laid off. And if you have kids, you're probably thinking about saving for college as well. So one of the least fun things to save for is emergencies, right? But it is so super important to have money set aside for emergencies. And here's why. If you don't have an emergency fund, it is double trouble, right? First of all, you have the emergency itself, and then you have a financial emergency on top of that. So Back when I was in my early 20s, I was very irresponsible with my finances. And I clearly remember every time that my car broke down, that I had to take one of my pets to the emergency vet clinic. Um, if I had some kind of health issue and had to go to the emergency room, not only did I have to deal with the stress of that particular emergency, I also had an extra layer of stress on top of it because I had to figure out how I was going to pay for that, right? So it wasn't just that my car was going to be in the shop for a few days, and I was going to have to figure out how to get back and forth to work, but how was I going to pay for this, right? Was I going to have to go to a payday lender? Was I going to have to call one of my credit cards and beg them to raise my limit so I could get my car fixed? That is super, super stressful. So I have people ask all the time, how much should I have in emergency savings? My goal for anyone that asks me, really, not just my clients, is at least 6 months of your expenses. And so, first of all, it's important to know exactly what are your monthly expenses, so you even have that number to shoot for. And for those individuals who your income varies every month, or maybe your spouse is self-employed, like maybe they're a realtor, they're a business owner, you may actually want to have closer to 12 months of expenses in your emergency fund. Now, if you currently have $0 in your emergency fund, 6 months is going to seem like a lot of money, right? If it takes $5,000 a month to run your household, $30,000 in a savings account might seem impossible if you currently have $0 or close to that in your savings. Start out with 1 month. Have that be your first goal. And then once you reach that, then you can bump it up to 2 months of your expenses and so on. That way it doesn't seem so far reaching and so overwhelming. Now, the other thing to keep in mind with your emergency savings is that you don't want to have any penalties to access it if you absolutely need to. And I have to remind people that your savings is not an investment. It's not. This is not money that should be invested in the stock market. It shouldn't even be invested in a CD, right? Because CDs have to come to maturity. And if you pull money out prior to that, you're actually going to have a penalty on that. So what I advise is a high interest online savings account or a money market account. Now, sometimes with the money market account, they will put a limit on how many withdrawals you can take in a month, but you really should be primarily just putting money in there and only occasionally having to pull money out. So we want to make sure that there aren't any penalties to get to that money if you really need it. So your emergency fund is more like an insurance policy than an investment. I love to say that the emergency fund is almost like anti-anxiety medication. So why do I say that? Well, here's the reason why. After I hit financial rock bottom and had my epiphany and had my financial turnaround, I remember probably about a year later, I actually did have some car trouble. But guess what? I had an emergency fund. And I noticed that I handled that situation completely different than I ever had in the past because I could just focus on dealing with the situation at hand and not freaking out about how I was going to pay for it because the money was already there. Another way to think about your emergency savings is that they're like financial shock absorbers. We are all going to have emergencies throughout our life that are going to cost us money, right? Now, It might be a national emergency like we're experiencing right now. However, even when this is over, you guys, we're all still going to have situations that come up for us personally that are going to be emergencies that are going to cost us money, right? So it is super important to have this money set aside. And so I like to think about it like shock absorbers. So if you've ever ridden in a car that has shocks that are going bad, you will notice that every single bump that you hit, you feel it. Like, your teeth almost clatter together. It's like you feel it in your bones, right? It hurts. But if you are driving along in a car that has good shocks and you hit a pothole, yes, you're still going to feel it, but it's not going to be so jarring. And really, that's the whole purpose of having emergency savings. So why don't people save for emergencies? Well, it's not really a lot of fun, right? Um, it's hard for us to get excited about saving for the bad things that might happen to us in the future, right? So, it's not really a lot of fun to save for emergencies. But, when you've experienced financial emergencies and you have that savings account there, um, that peace of mind and that reassurance will keep you on track for replenishing that for the next time. But sometimes it is hard for us to get started. The other reason why people don't save for emergencies is something called present bias. Now, this is actually brain chemistry. So there's a part of our brain that developed when we were in our caveman days. And the scientists call it a fancy name. They call it present bias. And essentially what it means is that the primitive part of our brain causes us to choose a sure reward today over a potential reward in the future. So that served our caveman ancestors well when they had to make the choice of, should I kill and eat this gazelle that is 50 feet away from me, or should I go and try to hunt down that elephant that might be a mile away from me that I might never catch up to? But it doesn't serve us very well now when it comes to our finances. But sometimes just understanding that these are the things that are keeping us from doing the saving. I'm going to give you some tricks to kind of override some of these biological and emotional things that are keeping you from saving. All right, so let's talk about some different reasons to save money other than just emergencies, because we know that's important. But your purchases, right? If we want to buy new furniture or a newer vehicle, or we want to go on vacation, or obviously we know Christmas comes around every December, and most of us are spending money for presents, etc., during the holiday season. But we always tend to act like these things are some kind of big surprise, right? When they're really not. So what I love to teach people how to do is to do bite-sized savings. So sometimes when we look at the big goal and we see it's going to cost us $3,000 or $4,000 to save up for vacation, let's chunk it down, right? If you get paid every week or you get paid every 2 weeks, let's take that dollar amount and find out how much we need to be saving every week in order to achieve that by the time we actually want to go on the vacation. So it seems a little more reasonable to say, okay, we have to save, $100 every pay period in order to take this vacation when we want to take it, versus looking at that big, huge dollar amount. The other good thing about saving up money for your purchases is that you typically spend less when you already have the money saved up versus when you're financing something. Now, I just want to clarify here. I'm not saying that you literally have to go and pay for your vacation with literal cash, right? Um, and I'm not saying that you can't purchase something on a credit card. What I'm saying is that you have money saved in your account so that you can pay off that credit card, or you're buying it with a debit card versus financing the purchase. Because it's much easier to spend somebody else's money than it is to spend your own money. And it's very interesting that studies have shown when people go into stores to purchase something, and they're given cash, they're more careful, right? Because spending cash or money that you've already earned, it hurts. It actually hurts a little bit versus, you have a credit card with a $15,000 limit. Yes, you're going to have to pay it back someday. It just doesn't have that same weight. And it's much easier to overspend when you're spending on credit. Another thing that I suggest to people when you've got multiple goals that you're saving up for is to have an account for each one. Sometimes if you have all of your savings in one account, it can be hard to keep track of what you're saving for, right? So, in fact, I highly recommend at least two savings accounts. So, you want a savings account specifically for your emergency fund, and that's all it's for. And then, if you want to have more than one account for your various purchases, you can do that. So typically what I do is I have my emergency fund account, but then I also have another savings account that is for the various things that I'm saving up for, vacations, etc. But in the past, I have actually had a separate savings account specifically for my car. So if you have a big goal like that, the banks don't care whether you have $10,000 in one account or you've got it spread out over three savings accounts, right? Most of the time you can, most savings accounts are zero fees. So if it is easier for you to keep track of exactly what you're spending for or saving for and how much you have saved, you can put them in separate accounts. And most banks will let you actually put a nickname to that account. So it'll say, Christmas fund, vacation fund, new car fund, etc. And here's the other thing. A lot of times people feel like when you save money that you're never going to get to spend it. And that's not the truth. So when you save money, you're saving it so that you can spend it later. So spending and saving are not opposites. They're actually two sides of the same coin. So saving is really deferred spending. And sometimes just having that mental shift around it will make it easier for you to save money. Because I have heard from, certain individuals where they feel like saved money is money that they never get to enjoy. And that feels very restrictive to them. All right, so I want you to take 1 minute right now, and if you've got a pen and paper handy, if not, just think, what are three purchases that you want to start saving for? Okay, I do have a question that I am going to answer. Um, should I reduce the amount going into retirement while the market value is so low as it's just losing value? Honestly, I am not decreasing my contributions to my retirement account right now. What you have to realize is that you are essentially buying all those investments while they are on sale right now. So hang tight with retirement because we are actually going to talk about that here in a minute. All right, so the big elephant in the room. One of the biggest reasons for us to be saving money is for our retirement. 18%, only 18% of Americans are confident that they're going to have enough money in retirement. And 24% of Americans have pushed out their retirement date this year. And in fact, this statistic is actually from last year, so it could even be higher than that. So it is really super important for us to be saving for our retirement because there's no such thing as a retirement loan, right? The only way we're going to pay for retirement is a combination of Social Security and whatever we ourselves save for retirement. Unless you are one of those rare unicorns that has access to a pension, this is how we are going to take care of ourselves in our elder years. So it's important that we are taking advantage of tax-favored investment vehicles. So if you have access to a 401k, a 403b, an IRA, etc., it's really important that we are taking advantage of those. And I know a lot of times these terms can feel overwhelming if this isn't, something you've ever studied up on. And a lot of financial planners, unfortunately, use a lot of complicated language. And it's, they're steeped in these terms all the time. And so a lot of times they'll assume that we know exactly what they are talking about. So let me just give you a little bit of an explanation. So with your 401k or your 403b, this is just basically a retirement arrangement that your employer has put together for you. And there are tax benefits by doing it. So you may have heard of, a Roth 401k versus a regular 401k. What does that mean? So if you have a regular 401k, here's basically what it means. You're putting money into that account before taxes are being taken out. So you're basically saving yourself taxes on the front end. With a Roth, you are putting in the money after you've already paid your taxes on it, but in retirement, you won't have to pay tax on that money. So the way that I like to look at pre-tax versus Roth is this. With pre-tax, you are being taxed on the seed. With a Roth, I'm sorry, it's the other way around. My bad. With a Roth, you're being taxed on the seed, right? The money that's coming out and being planted into your retirement account, it's getting taxed up front. But you're not paying tax on the harvest. With pre-tax, it's the exact opposite. So you pay the tax up front and or you save the tax up front, but then you have to pay it on the back end, which hopefully is a larger amount. That's why the Roth has really, really grown in popularity. So, obviously this is something that you need to be talking with your financial planner about. Certainly you've got access to, someone through your company that can help guide you there. But it's really important that you are saving for retirement. So I also get a lot of questions relative to investing versus paying down debt, or should you be doing both? If you have a lot of credit card debt, student loan debt that you're paying interest on, certainly we want to reduce that debt. However, I have found that most people can typically invest at least a small amount while they are paying down their debt. And I encourage all my clients to be putting in at least as much to get the match. So if your employer matches, you guys, that's free money. So if they say, if you put in at least 5%, then we'll match you 50% of that. So basically they're throwing in 2.5% of your salary. You want to at least be doing that while you're paying down your debt, because that's free money. And here's the thing, the most important thing for you to understand is that small amounts now add up to big balances later. And I know a lot of people are freaked out right now because the stock market is down. Here is what I want to tell you about that, okay? The stock market is kind of like a roller coaster. You only get hurt if you try to get off the ride early. So I am not a fan of stopping your contributions, even when the market is down, because actually you are buying those investments while they're on sale. The people who do the boring thing, the people who month in and month out, year in and year out, always put in, 10 or 12% of their salary, they pretty much ignore all of the talking heads on the news. Those are the people who really end up winning in retirement. But obviously, if you are scared or nervous, it is important that you talk with your financial advisor. All right, you guys, I really do not want you to rob your 401k, especially right now, okay? I know that Congress has temporarily done away with penalties if you take out an early withdrawal. I still don't think it's a good idea. In fact, I think it's a terrible idea. Here's why. When you treat your 401k like an ATM, it's not good news. And I'm talking about early withdrawals, and I'm also talking about loans against your 401k. Because when you take a loan out against your 401k, a lot of people have the argument of, well, I'm just borrowing it from myself and I'm paying myself back with interest. Well, the problem is you're selling investments, and a lot of times you might be selling them at the wrong time, when the market is down. And then as you're paying it back, you might be paying it back as the market is going back up. So essentially, you've sold everything when it's low and you're buying it back while it's high, which is the worst thing that you could be doing. And most of the time, if you look at those investments over a long period of time, they're going to do better if you keep it in your 401k. The other problem is when you get a 401k loan, you now have a payroll deduction, and many people are tempted to decrease their contributions during that time. And that puts them even farther behind when it comes to retirement. So under the usual rules, if you take out money early and you withdraw it, or if you're changing jobs and you cash out an old retirement plan versus rolling it over, you're going to normally be hit with a 10% penalty, and then you're going to go owing taxes on top of that, right? So, and now is not the time to be taking early withdrawals from your 401k because you're also selling at the worst possible time. So one of the ways that I help my clients get excited about saving for retirement is to envision your elder self. Really picture yourself at retirement, and this can be hard if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s. But it's important for you to understand that it is your job to take care of you. when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. So I will have my clients age a photo of themselves to retirement age. And so, there's a couple of different apps and websites where you can do that. I think Face App is probably the most popular one. And, it can be a little unnerving to see yourself staring back at you with wrinkles and gray hair. But you have to understand that it's your responsibility right now to be taking care of yourself in your elder years. Because right now you are in prime income earning potential. And if you don't adequately set aside for retirement, you may not be able to retire when you want to. And, what if you have health issues? We're probably not going to have as much energy at 65, 75, and 85 as we do at 25, 35, and 45. So it's really important that we prioritize this. So I will have my clients age a picture of themselves, and I'll have them print it out and hang it somewhere where they can see it. So if you think about if somebody robbed your grandmother, or one of your, say your parents are elderly, you would be really upset with them, right? You would be really upset if a young person stole money from your elderly parent or your aunt or your grandfather. But if you are taking out early withdrawals, if you are taking out 401k loans, that's essentially what you're doing to yourself. So every time you decide not to save for your retirement, you're essentially stealing money from your elder self. All right, let's talk about another reason to save, and this is college. It's super important to remember that we want to save for retirement first and make sure that our retirement is on track and fully funded before we start saving for college for our kids. As I said, there's no such thing as a retirement loan. So you have to cover that base first, right? Only about 50% of parents are saving for their kids for college. And currently the average student loan debt is about $32,000. And the average 4-year degree cost is $46,000. So, the other thing I tell parents is that there's a lot of ways to save for college. Yes, we can be setting aside money into special accounts for our kids, but your kids can also be working and help contribute to their college funds. Your kids can get scholarships. There are things like grants. There are work study programs. Maybe a 4-year degree really isn't the best fit for them. Maybe a 2-year technical degree is a better fit for them. But obviously, once your retirement is covered, then you probably do want to start setting aside some money for your kids for college. And here's the crazy thing, you guys. Adjusting for inflation, today's newborn will require almost $400,000 for college. So hopefully I didn't make any of you guys pass out. But yes, it is important. We need to start saving now. All right, so let's talk about how we can really get ourselves motivated to save money, because we've got these things in our biology that are working against us, right? We have present bias. We have the fact that saving for emergencies isn't fun. So how do we really get ourselves motivated and excited to save money? So I have a method that I call emotionally charged saving. So you really need a burning desire to save. And we can use our emotions in our favor to do this. So essentially what we're doing is we're combining both positive emotion and negative emotion to push us in the direction that we want to go. So let me give you a real quick example. Let's talk about retirement, because for a lot of us, that's the one that's really hard for us to get our head around, and really make ourselves want to save. Oops, sorry, skipped ahead. So I know where my husband and I want to retire. We have been to Maui twice, and I can picture everything about Hawaii, right? I know exactly which part of the island on Maui we would want to retire to. I know what restaurants we'd eat at. I know which beaches we'd snorkel on. Um, and so by building the detail of what you want, like a lot of people have never thought about what their retirement is going to look like. And I want you to spend some time to actually do that. Really think about, where, maybe there is some vacation destination that you've been several times that you really like. And that's where you see yourself retiring. Well, the more positive emotion that we can build around that, the better, right? So, what are some ways that I could amp up my motivation to save for retirement on Maui? Well, obviously, I could print out a whole bunch of pictures of Maui. I could put a palm tree on my screensaver for my phone. I could wear coconut lotion or put, some kind of Hawaiian music as my ringtone, just to engage my senses and get me really excited about the goal I'm saving for. And you guys, you can do this with anything. It doesn't have to be retirement, but it's just a really good example. So, what about the negative side of things? Well, what I mean by that is sometimes we're more motivated to avoid pain than we are to increase pleasure. So those are basically the two reasons why people take action to begin with. They want to increase their pleasure, or they want to decrease pain. And sometimes decreasing pain is actually a more powerful motivator. So in the case of retirement, if I think about what happens if I don't save enough money to retire to Hawaii, like what if I don't save any money at all? Well, if you haven't been to a not so nice nursing home, maybe one that's, Medicaid approved, not too long ago, I had to shop nursing homes for my mother-in-law, and it was really eye-opening. And there was one in particular that I toured, and honestly, I got a few steps in and I couldn't wait to get out, um, because it wasn't a great place. But seeing it and being there and thinking, oh my gosh, like if I don't save money, I could end up someplace like this, right? So it's almost like you're putting two jetpacks on your goal, positive emotion and negative emotion. So you supercharge your goal with so much positive emotion, but then you think about how horrible it would be if you don't achieve that. And the two of those things together and the contrast between the two is really going to help keep you motivated. Because every time I think about, am I going to put some money into my IRA or not? I don't just think about Hawaii. I also think about the not so nice nursing home, right? And those two things together make it a no-brainer for me to put some money into my IRA. So the other thing I love to do is have a vision board. And, we as humans are very visual creatures. And so, you can create a digital vision board on Pinterest. You can create a physical vision board. I actually have two of them in my office, where it's just a cork board with pictures of all the goals that I want to have, that I want to achieve, and that I'm saving for. And having those things in front of us on a regular basis helps to keep us excited. So why aren't we using willpower to save money? Well, the problem is willpower has its limits, right? If you've had a bad day You find it hard to resist the cookies, maybe to resist, having an extra glass of wine or bourbon. Um, we have a finite amount of willpower, and we have different things that tax our willpower throughout the day and throughout the week. And so if we leave savings up to willpower alone, then we're probably not going to do it. So my goal is to minimize the need for willpower almost entirely, right? I want to require just a tiny little smidgen of willpower, but I don't want to count on it because it's not reliable. So, what is reliable? Well, we alluded to the emotional part of things, right? When we can create so much emotional pull related to our savings goals, it makes it so much easier for us to do it because we want to. We're excited about it. Now, the other powerful tool that we can use is habit. So, habits are extremely powerful. And the great thing is once you have a habit in place, then you don't even have to think about it, right? I mean, nobody had to tell you to brush your teeth this morning. I mean, nobody had to tell me because it's a habit, right? When you have a habit, something that you do every day, you don't even think about it. It's embedded in your subconscious, and you just naturally do it as a part of your routine. So one of the shortcuts to building a new positive habit is to link it to a habit that you already have. So if we think about saving money, we can link it to something that we're already doing at the same frequency. So let's say, for example, that you get paid every 2 weeks, or maybe you get paid every week, and a day after you get paid, you write out your bills, right? Well, you could essentially create a fake bill for yourself that is savings, you know, and make that a part of your routine when you're paying your bills is that you put some money over into your savings. I did this to help me to build the habit of tracking and managing my spending. Um, I basically made a deal with myself that I couldn't watch my favorite TV show until I had checked my accounts, paid my bills, and transferred money to savings, right? And so this particular show was on Sunday nights, and I had that deal with myself. And guess what? I made sure it got done because I wanted to watch my TV show. So you can link something to an existing habit. And then, of course, supercharge these new habits with as much emotion as possible. All right, so let's talk about the role that discipline does have in savings because we do need a little bit of it. So we want to be paying ourselves first. A lot of times people will say, by the time I get done paying all the bills, there's no money left to save. Well, here's typically what happens is, we pay all our bills and we see we have a certain dollar amount left. We just end up spending that, right? So what I love to do is to take just a little bit of discipline to set up what I call mindless saving. So mindless spending is not good, but mindless saving is good. So what we want to do is set up automatic transfers. Go ahead and, set up an automatic transfer to go into your savings a day after you get paid and just put it on repeat. So my husband and I both do this. We have it set up so every Friday, a certain amount of money just gets kicked over into our savings accounts. We don't have to do anything, right? So we had to exercise a very tiny amount of discipline to set it up, but now it's all on autopilot. And, I tell people, look, if you have to go and transfer money back because you have some emergency, that's fine. But most of the time, you're not even going to miss it. And here's the other thing. if you don't have any money in your savings account, the first thing you have to do is open a savings account. So sometimes I'm just shocked when I have clients who are making like really good, really decent money come in, and I say, how much do you have in your savings? And they say nothing. And then I will say, do you have a savings account? And they'll say, well, no. Well, once I get some savings, I'll open a savings account. But here's the truth. Your money needs a good home, right? You'll have some savings when you have some place for it to go. You need an open container for your savings, and that is a savings account. You guys, you can open one with $5 or $10. It doesn't take a lot of money to do this. Most banks will let you open one for $25 or less. So if you have to start small, that's fine. Just get started. Now there are some retirement plans that offer something called Save More Tomorrow, which I think is really cool. And essentially what it does is it kicks up your retirement contribution whenever you get a raise. So if that's something that your employer offers, then I would highly recommend taking advantage of that. But here's the thing, you can actually do it yourself if you know you're going to be getting a raise. Go ahead and go to the payroll department, or log on to your online portal and kick up your retirement contribution by 1% or 2%. You won't even miss it. And so one of the things that I've always done is, once the saving becomes comfortable, so let's just say you're starting with $10 a week, right? Start small. Do that for a couple of months, and then if you don't miss that money, then bump it up to 15 or bump it up to 20, and until you kind of feel that pinch, and then keep it there. But the most important thing to remember about saving money is that this is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. For most people, there's no need to sell all your stuff and, eat beans and rice for 2 years, etc., to get yourself in a place that's financially healthy. It's really just a matter of making small intentional changes and keeping them on repeat and building just those really small habits. Now, please keep in mind that success is not a straight line. Don't give up. Sometimes I'll have clients come to me and they'll be upset because they had to pull money out of their emergency fund. And I'll say, why are you mad? Like, that's exactly what it's here for, right? Because if you didn't have this emergency fund, yes, you've taken out part of it to pay for this, but what would you have done in the past, right? You would have put it on a credit card. So success is not a straight line. It's important to not give up. It does kind of look like the messy line on the right side of the screen. So here's something else to keep in mind. You're probably not going to be able to save much money if you don't have a spending plan. I don't really like the word budget. I prefer a spending plan. So what does this mean? This just means tracking your spending on a regular basis. Because if you don't really know what you're spending on certain things, I can guarantee you that you are wasting money that you could be saving. You're probably wasting money on things that really aren't even important to you. So you can, there's a lot of great free apps out there. The one that I like and I use is called Ask Zeta, AskZeta.com. It's free. It is geared towards couples, but singles can use it as well. And it's just, it presents information in a very visually appealing way. And, it'll pull in all the information from your various bank accounts, which I think is really important, because if you're spending money on different debit cards and maybe 1 or 2 credit cards, sometimes you lose track of what you're spending on a particular category. So if you're dining out and you're, putting it on different cards, you might not really know how much you've spent. But if you use an app like mint.com or askzeta.com, or, your bank might even have a spending tracker built into your online banking. But it is vitally important that you understand exactly where your money is going, because it's going to be really hard for you to save money if your spending is out of control. And, keep in mind that the normal flow of things is that we want to have at least something in your emergency fund before you start really hammering on your debt. So my recommendation is at least 1 month of your expenses. So I know the advice has been out there for a while of, you want at least $1,000 in your savings account first before you start attacking debt. That advice is over 20 years old. So $1,000 is not enough for a mini emergency fund. Most of us could sneeze and have $1,000 emergency, right? So we want to have at least 1 month of expenses in your savings account before you really start attacking your debt. And then once you have your high interest debt paid off, so that's typically your credit cards, then we want to go back and get that 6 months into your savings account. It's also very important to celebrate your victories. When you reach a major milestone of, getting even just 1 month of your savings, when you've got that goal and you accomplish that, it is important to celebrate and acknowledge that. So we just want to make sure that our celebration doesn't wipe out all the progress that we've created, right? All right, so I'm going to check the chat box here real quick because we have a few minutes, and I want to make sure that we get to those. Oops, let's see here. All right, questions. Oh my gosh, you guys have so many good questions in here. I'm probably not going to be able to get to all of that. I know some of you guys are asking very specific questions about your particular situation. Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer those. However, if you have questions that are not getting answered, certainly contact us later, and we'll see what we can do to get those answered for you. All right. Awesome, you guys. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. And, it's really important that you know that IBH has some great free financial resources for you. So you guys are really lucky to have this. You can have 30 consecutive days of free phone consultations for debt counseling, for budgeting, for college and retirement planning, taxes, etc. And 25% off your CPA fees. You guys, that's amazing. Plus, you also have some really cool online tools. So you've got calculators, articles, etc., frequently asked questions, you've got courses. If you guys want to expand your knowledge and increase your money IQ, I highly recommend that you take advantage of these free resources that you have. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And if you want to take advantage of those free resources, please, please, please do that. You can contact the EAP directly at 866-750-1327, or you can go to the member portal, which is ibhsolutions.com/members. And Anybody who logged in today, we are going to be making this available to you so that you can access the replay and you can access the slides. So once again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day.